Natasha Cloud had a season high in points with 31 scored against the Los Angeles Sparks on Sunday evening. And it's the aggression piece for me more than anything with her. So let's go ahead and dive into the film and take a look at just what caught my eye. And before we do so, let's look at the conversation I had post game with head coach Nate Tibbetts about her aggression. Natasha's aggression on offense in particular. I was curious, do you feel like her aggression is kind of a barometer for your team in terms of galvanizing your team and kind of getting them to play in the flow that you desire?
Aggression is a good word describing Cloud for sure. Yeah, I mean she's the temperature in the room. She's the one that brings the fire, and um, again, we're 21 games in, and she's been extremely consistent with that, and that's not easy to do. That's a tough thing to carry each and every day, but she's done a great job of it, and we need that from her. That's who she is, and we respect it.
All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the film. All right, first play here, we're going to be looking at Natasha. It's all going to be Natasha in this film session in particular. Just working off the catch and just generally playing off the second side of action. So we see initially, obviously, she's bringing the ball up the floor. And this is one thing that I like about the Phoenix Mercury offense. As after the initial action takes place, they're able to kind of get into it's almost like fluff action, if you will. Just kind of some action to get the defense rotating to kind of set the tone for the possession. And this is in particular what I like the most for it. Is with Brittany Griner and playing off of the pop and connecting that to the second side of actions to get the defense rotating, to tilt the court in a different manner and different things of that nature. And with that, and pair it with the pop off the catch from Brittany Griner, we see Kalia Copper promptly, in a scripted manner, hit the 45 cut to remove the nail help. And that's going to then create both a pocket for them to operate in, but also movement for the offense. As she swings it, like I mentioned, to the second side, she follows her pass, sets a screen, and now it becomes an empty corner pick and roll between her and Sophie Cunningham. We're going to see, customary to Kurt Miller-led defenses, extremely early and heavy and nail help from Ari McDonald off of Natasha Cloud. And this is the aggression piece for me with Natasha, particularly when she's working off the ball. Getting in these catch and shoot scenarios with no hesitation, catch it, lace it up, knock it down. It's the lack of hesitancy and just the general lack of thinking within it. It's just playing off of instinct. I know that based off of the defensive coverages and how teams usually like to guard me when I'm off the ball, off the catch, I'm going to have enough time if I get my puppies in order early to catch it, lace them up, and knock them down. And that's exactly what she does here with her first of 4 hits from deep in this game. And then next up here, another one of my favorite things that I've been watching with Natasha Cloud this season. Keep talking about the aggression piece. I talked with Nate Tibbetts about it, and I've spoken just generally across the season about it with Natasha, with this offense that she's going to be a heavily featured within. And it's her just finding these pockets to really dictate and put her stamp on the game in terms of scoring. And this is exactly what we see here. She's coming off of this early offense drag screen from Brittany Griner's empty corner pick and roll. We still see Sophie Cunningham getting ready to cross the half-court line. There's 22 seconds left on the clock. The important part of it here, and this is something that we'll be looking at again in a couple more reps later on in this film session, but it's Natasha Cloud's mindset. And in particular with the coverage, like we talked about with her off the ball, they play her soft also when she has the ball in her hands. I mentioned this particular piece of things and her dynamic on our most recent episode of the PHNX Mercury podcast. But teams like to sneak in unders with Natasha Cloud and pick and roll. Because of the prowess and the impact that her drives have, knowing that that's the first thing that she likes to get to, but also to try to entice her into taking these pull-up three-point opportunities. And if she's caught in limbo in terms of her decision-making, or she's generally not being aggressive, that's going to throw her rhythm off. And then if she ultimately takes the shot, the percentage that she could certainly shoot at kind of starts to see a little bit of a deficit. But when she's operating in a space of aggression and she's hunting out these pull-up pockets and these opportunities to score on consistency, it hits different like it did in Sunday's win over the Los Angeles Sparks. And we see just that here. She's coming across. She gets the drag screen from Brittany Griner. Now pay close attention to Ari McDonald and also the nail help coming here from Lasia Clarendon. So you see there's a triangle of defenders around Natasha Cloud as she comes off of the screen. However, the nail help isn't completely all the way over. Also, Ari McDonald is ducking under the screen from Brittany Griner. That's naturally going to create a split-second opportunity if anticipated, and if doing so with confidence, for Natasha Cloud to sniff out a pull-up pocket opportunity for a three. That's exactly what she does here. No hesitation in any capacity. As you can see, no hesitation, gets into a great rhythm, gets her balance together, and knocks it down. I think that part and that piece and everything in terms of her general dynamic on offense is extremely important. And here we're going to be seeing Natasha again. Early offense drag screen from WNBA. Notice this time, however, she gets the over. So last time we saw the drag screen from the opposite side of the floor. She knocked down her second three as Erin McDonald ducked under the screen. Now, WNBA does a better job this time of closing that distance and proximity from the ultimate point of the screen, as well as Natasha and timing up when she's coming off of the screen from BG. Does a good job kind of trailing into it to take away the under angle, forces the over, and that's exactly what they want ultimately within their pick and roll process. WNBA gets just enough of the hip of area as she tries to navigate, and you can already see as I slow-mo it, Natasha Cloud breaking leverage and being able to get downhill, engage the X5, who is De'Erica Hamby, who's guarding WNBA in this scenario. She's able to come off of the pick and engage De'Erica Hamby. Ends up, because of the pace and tempo at which everything is happening, forcing a late switch. She's able to then be composed, get back into it, and as you can see, she, again, with the aggression button and searching out her opportunities to stamp an impact in scoring, gets the late switch, sees just enough separation as she takes retreat dribbles to kind of respace and get back into action with the mismatches that have occurred with the switch. Ultimately nets herself an opportunity wide open in mid-range, does not hesitate in any capacity, knocks it down. This is the type of mentality that they need her to be operating with on consistency, regardless of who's available and in the lineup for the Mercury, and regardless of who might not be on any given game. And we're going to see a little bit more of the aggression button here. Gets a solid screen here from Natasha Mack. And then watch as she comes off the screen. No hesitation. And I love how she just kind of flows to the second side. Doesn't stop playing. And now she's going to be perfectly positioned as Kahleah Copper comes off of the screen from the second side to ultimately get into a catch and shoot scenario. Where, again, talked about her being played somewhat softly when she doesn't have the ball in her hands, in addition to when she's on the ball. We see her in the off-ball variant here. She's going to shake up, replace Kahleah Copper as she comes off of the side pick and roll. And you see Kahleah is able to engage the big, the X5. That also, because it's going towards the two-side and pick and roll, that means that there's low man responsibility for De'Erica Hamby. And great job from, again, Natasha Cloud shaking up to replace Kahleah Copper. And Kai is able to sense and read the help in this scenario, ultimately able to play make off of the attention that she garners in pick and roll. Natasha Cloud's wide open from a timely pass from Kahleah Copper. No hesitation again. Catch it, lace it up, knock it down. And you can tell she's in the groove, she's in the rhythm. When she gets to talking to fans, she gets to talking to opponents, and gets to talking to her teammates, even her head coach at times. That's how you know she's locked in and she's in the space that they need her to be in. And that's exactly what we saw there. Then again, we're going to see an action that we're going to see a little bit more later in the game because they saw such great success from it. Something they get into with frequency and something I like within their pick and roll process. And that's Natasha Cloud getting into these 77 type of actions where they're getting double screens up high on the court and enabling her to play in actions and from there. Sometimes it's a traditional pick and roll in a sense. Sometimes she gets in a handback chase or get action like we see here. So we see the wide screen here for Sophie Cunningham to come towards the ball. Ultimately, we see Natasha Cloud pitch it to Sophie Cunningham, and she's going to chase it and get back into get action. So following the pass that she made, ultimately receiving the ball back from the person that she passed it to, an easier way for them to generate pace because instead of having a live dribble, you're literally running and chasing the pass that you just made. And it's more friendly to a player getting downhill, creates a little bit more pace in the pick and roll context. We see just that here, and just watch Natasha as she gets into the reject, and they kind of play from action from there. Zia Cooks loaded up, anticipating her coming off of the screen from Natasha Mack. She rejects that, and then just look at the tempo and pace of play here. Ultimately able to find Sophie Cunningham for this three, but again, the reaction that she's getting from the defense now, midway through the second quarter, after she's knocked down a couple of threes and she's been the leading scorer in the game and for the Phoenix Mercury, is they're starting to load up a little bit more and they're starting to pay a little bit more attention than they initially would have based off of the game plan on the scouting report coming into this game. And this is where she can really just start to force defenses to pay for conceding help. Now, this is for Sophie Cunningham. Imagine it's also Kalia Copper with either two of Diana Taurasi or Rebecca Allen on the floor as well. The type of spacing and manipulation of it and of the defense that they can get from their pieces that they have on offense is just extremely valuable. And it's just hard to guard. It's just really hard to guard, especially when Natasha is operating with the mindset that she had on Sunday. Next, we're going to see her space off the ball again. This time, we're going to be seeing Kalia Copper getting into an angle pick and roll, going towards the outer third of the floor with this pick and roll rep with Brittany Griner. Spaced off of the nail in the opposite slot of where Kalia Copper is Natasha Cloud. Now, we're going to pay attention to her process off the ball again, pay attention to how the defense is playing her, and ultimately her mindset within this particular context and rep. Kai comes off of the screen. Great job with the extra dribble. And now again, because of Natasha Cloud's prowess and her mindset early in the game and setting the tone for this team in the first quarter, she had 13 points, knocked down 2 threes, 1 on ball, 1 off the ball. And then at this point in the third quarter, she knocked down another 3-pointer as well. Now they're starting to treat her a little bit different than the initial game plan and scouting reports coming into the game suggested. They were kind of gapping off her, giving her space, trying to play within her process, force her to take more jump shots. But then when she starts to make jump shots, the defense now has to adjust and counter. That puts things right in her favor in terms of playing to her strengths. And she's able to pull the strings and dictate in action. That's exactly what you want. You get the pick and roll from Kalia Copper. And side note with Kalia Copper, I've loved the tempo that she's played at in pick and roll this season. The general decision making, her processing, and understanding the impact that her having the ball in this context has. So she comes off, she engages former teammate Azarae Stevens in her drop coverage. And it's this extra dribble. In years past, Kalia Copper may have potentially picked up her dribble here, settled for the midi pull-up, or tried to play through contact and get to the free throw line. Now, understanding the spacing as a template that the Phoenix Mercury have, as well as the weapon that she is in pick and roll, she takes that one extra dribble right there to get a paint touch, knowing that that's going to collapse the defense, and that forces the defense to really just commit 1 or 2 extra steps than if she stopped right here. And then they're able to get back home and keep their defensive shell intact. Keeping her dribble alive for that extra dribble, truly getting her feet muddy and really getting a deep paint touch, collapses the entire defense. Now she's able to kick out to Natasha Cloud, and now Natasha Cloud is able to play in the context of offense that she's also extremely good at. And that's with a closeout. But the difference is, it's not a short closeout. She's getting a long closeout based off of the space she's been operating in earlier in the game, stemming from the confidence. So now, instead of closing out a step or maybe 2 past the elbow, now we see Zia Cook running her all the way off the 3-point line. Advantage, Natasha Cloud. She's able to get into a drive, splits the nail help, gets into a layup +1, and again, lion roar, dog barking. That's exactly the space that this team needs her to operate in. She is the barometer for them, and when she's aggressive, their entire offense and general process hits completely differently. Now fast forward to the second half of play. You see her getting into just a little bit of horns action, get the little flare screen, gets the catch. She could have took this shot early in the shot clock, but she ultimately decided to turn this one down in particular. But we're going to see what happens in the action as it unfolds after that. So we get her seeing another under, and this is what I'm talking about right here. She lets the initial opportunity off of the flare pass by, as you see Ray Burrell and Lasia Clarendon elect to switch this action. There's an opportunity for a catch and shoot here. She doesn't really feel it rhythm-wise, lets it kind of fly by, lets the dust settle on action. They get into the next action, which is now a screen from Brittany Griner, and we're going to see Kalia Copper doing a good job respacing off the nail in the opposite slot. But paying attention to Natasha Cloud here, we talked about on our second rep in this film session, her operating against unders and doing so with a confident mindset. If she's going to decide to come to the other side of the screen, do so with aggression and win at that angle to ultimately win on leverage and get downhill or engage the help defense on the other side of the screen. If not, come off of that screen with confidence and then get into one of their automatics and flipping that angle of the screen and having Brittany Griner rescreen to get that angle to force the defender to go over that screen, ultimately allowing Natasha Cloud to get downhill, and then she can play in chaos from there, which is a space that she operates extremely comfortably in and confidently in playmaking and scoring for herself. Or the third option within all of that is for her to just be confident and be in rhythm to knock down pull-up jump shots, anticipating this coverage that she sees quite often. That's exactly what we see here, which is that third option. Coming off of the screen, seeing and anticipating and feeling that under coming from Ray Burrell, Very soft coverage. Good job from PridGeon-Garner, getting just enough of Burrell as she tries to navigate the screen. Advantage Natasha Cloud. This is the space they need her operating in. No hesitation. Good rhythm, good lift. Laces it up, knocks it down. And then here on this next rep, now we're starting to see this is the space that you really want to be in if you're the Phoenix Mercury. Natasha Cloud being such a fire starter for your offense that now she's generating soft or just general two to the ball scenarios and pick and roll. And that's exactly what we see here. Because of the prowess, because of how much damage she's been doing with her drives, with her pull-up threes and pick and roll, and just generally her playmaking and her general process. Now she's starting to see a little bit of two to the ball, where we saw Layshia Clarendon, Ray Burrell, Ari McDonald duck under screens in the first half and really in the first 2.5 quarters. Now we see late third quarter, Dearica Hamby with Layshia Clarendon at the level of the screen. And now flat hedging, trying to get the ball out of her hands. This is exactly what you want. And Natasha Cloud just being composed and being the point guard, the floor general that she is, she's able to win on leverage with Dearica Hamby, one of the better hedging centers in the W, ultimately able to turn the corner, and now she's able to put pressure on the rest of the defense because they have to react as it's a 4-on-3 behind the double team. She wins on leverage, and now she's able to quickly process as PridGeon-Garner rolls to the basket that the skip for Shug Sutton is there. Now, they're not going to get a direct score from this, but just watch the rotations that come because of the quick decision made off of the double team after breaking leverage from Natasha Cloud. Rotation. Good job on the skip from PridGeon-Garner. +1, +1, +1. All of these rotations, their ball movement is 2-3 steps ahead of the rotations of the Los Angeles Sparks. Ultimately, because they're scrambling for, as we see when the double team took place on Natasha Cloud up top, double team took place with 19 seconds left right here. And they have the entire rest of the shot clock to play within their advantage. If they're able to do this with consistency with Natasha Cloud, because of the space that she's operating in as a scorer, which is what it'll have to come from, this is going to be extremely advantageous for them. And like I said, A+ green shot quality on the backside, on the third side from Shug Sutton. She doesn't knock this down. But again, because of the scrambling nature of the Sparks defense, Sophie Cunningham is going completely unaccounted for to the offensive glass. Hat tip to Kahleah Copper as well for competing on the glass too. But again, Sophie Cunningham goes completely unaccounted for. The ball bounces advantageously right into her lap off of the tip from Kahleah Copper's offensive rebound. Sophie's able to get up an easy, uncontested layup. All stemming from the process of Natasha Cloud at the inception of the possession, playing off of the double team. Couple more reps here in the fourth quarter. Looking at Natasha Cloud again, just being aggressive. This is the space she has to continue to operate in. Pay attention to the pick and roll coverage. Now she's getting overs in two-player actions, where in the first half, like I talked about, she was getting unders. Ari McDonald fighting to get over the screen. Good job from PridGeon-Garner doing just enough to create separation for her as she comes off of that. Look at the patience from Natasha. You get a quick stunt from Zia Cook from that nail as you see Kahleah Copper respace to the opposite slot. But because of the space that Natasha's operating in, she's unfazed. Picks up her dribble, still stays in great rhythm, finds another pull-up pocket. You see Zia Cook committing back to Kahleah Copper. Natasha Cloud's now wide open at the elbow, 6 seconds left. Under 2 minutes, the Mercury are down 3, and this is a space where she's been one of the best in the WNBA. She's been the 4th best scorer in the WNBA in these clutch contexts. And she's only missed one shot from the field and one shot from the free throw line. And I think she's got maybe 8 or 9 attempts, including free throws, 8 field goal attempts, and maybe 1 free throw attempt that she's missed. In this context, in the clutch, this is the space you need her operating in, and that's exactly what she's doing, executing in time on task. And then that same action we talked about earlier, where they go from wide action flowing into double screens up high for Natasha Cloud, one of my favorite packages in terms of actions for her in particular. We see them get into that again. Now, last rep we talked about after the wide screen, Sophie Cunningham received a pitch from Natasha Cloud, and Natasha Cloud chased her pass and got the ball back. This time, because of the proximity and because of the coverage off ball, as you can see, Rickea Jackson hugged up on Sophie Cunningham. Because she's not free to get the catch, they just flow into a double screen here, so they get to 77. And then we see Natasha Cloud now flowing into an empty side pick and roll. Great job, which is something else I love within the spacing process of the Phoenix Mercury, as they like to empty sides to clear space and allow for players to play in two-player actions with as much space as possible. We see Kiki Herbert-Harrigan occupying that deep corner initially. As you see Cloud come off of the screen, and you see another under here from Ari McDonald on that second screen with Brittney Griner. I love this part of it, the clearing of the space to allow for it to be a more organic two-player action, but also with Natasha Cloud, she's very astute with taking pick and roll points and taking them lower to the floor. That spaces them from the nail help, and it also gives her a little bit more advantageous of an angle to ultimately come off of a screen with. And we see just that here. Brittney Griner nails the screen, Natasha Cloud nails the pacing and timing at which she comes off of Brittney Griner's screen. Advantage Phoenix Mercury as she comes off, and Ari McDonald's going to get nailed by another Brittney Griner screen. You're going to see Natasha Cloud feel that, find another pull-up pocket. This is not the cleanest of pull-up pockets, but again, when you've been operating in the space that she's been operating in over the course of this game, as we've highlighted, zoomed in on, and documented, this contest from Azurá Stevens, which is a fairly solid one, as well as a late one coming from Ari McDonald as she navigates the screen, quite literally does not matter. And watch how the ball just goes through the basket with great confidence from Natasha Cloud. And again, looking at time and score, another clutch scenario. She took this shot, Phoenix Mercury were down 3 with a little bit under 2 minutes left. End up coming to within 1. And then a few possessions later, sideline out of bounds, they go right back to Natasha Cloud. This is a big time thing right here. Going to Natasha Cloud instead of Kahleah Copper, just based off of the floor game, and just generally speaking because of the space that Natasha has set from the tone all the way to the end of the game, is exactly the space that they need her to be operating in. And we see just that here. She's going to be able to close the coffin. She's good enough to operate without screens often. And we see just that here. Gets the catch from sideline out of bounds. You see them manipulate the space, put Kahleah Copper to her strong hand in case she does decide to go right. She's ultimately going to play to the space that's enabled off of the nail to her left. Great crossover, creating space, gets downhill, gets into the scoop layup. And that's ultimately the dagger and the nail in the coffin for the Phoenix Mercury. This is where they need Natasha Cloud operating in space-wise and mentality-wise, attacking on offense the same way that she does on defense. And when she does so, this team is at their best.